Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Dimitri speaking. Hi, guys. We are back after about 2 weeks of being offline because we were on holidays.
Yep, we've treated ourselves to a little bit of time off.
Yeah, we have. But we haven't forgotten you guys, and we have been thinking about how we're gonna do the run the podcast and how we're going to, what the format will be, etc., etc. So we have been busy doing that whilst being on holiday. Where did you go, Tommy?
I went to Greece, my friend. I went to Costa Navarino, on the western part of mainland Greece. And yourself?
I went to Paros, which is an island off the coast of Greece, Athens even, and about 20-minute plane ride, 4-hour boat trip.
4-hour boat trip.
Something that I've found out myself.
Interesting
Muppets,
boat trip?
mate. Absolute muppet. Took a boat for 4 hours after... So basically, I don't know how you had it, but I was delayed at Heathrow for about 3 hours.
Okay.
On the tarmac. So that was good. Comfy.
You're only short though, so you haven't got to worry about leg room.
Well, let's not go into yeah. No, but it was horrible. So that was the time when London was going through huge storms.
Yeah.
And a lot of flights and airports were cancelled.
Mm-hmm.
My friends who were going the same night but from Stansted, their flight was cancelled.
Whoops.
I was sitting on a plane texting them and saying, "Oh, how are you guys doing?" Basically, what we're supposed to do is meet in Athens and then together go to Paros.
Okay.
They were Greek. I've never been to Greece before, blah, blah, blah.
They were Greek? Or are they still Greek?
Well, okay, fine. Sure. So, and yeah, so they broke the news to say that their flight was cancelled. And I was going to have to brave it on my own, which to be fair was fine. It was just a bit of a bummer that I had to wait because they were going the next day. So I had to spend the day. I thought I was going to spend the day by myself, but one of the guys was in Greece already. So, it actually worked out quite nice. So we got some good time together. And actually, part of the next feature will be with a guy that, a friend of mine who is Greek, and he will talk to me about the Greek. Well, he'll talk to us about the Greek crisis and how that started, what led to it, and how they're surviving now, and what the prospects may be.
Yeah.
So that will be interesting, guys. So do tune in for that one.
Yeah.
So anyway, last time we've what did we end on, Tommy?
We did the first part of our conspiracy theory special. So we touched on 9/11, JFK, and the moon landings being faked.
Yeah, and apparently, a lot of people actually liked that one.
Yeah.
I think to be fair, conspiracy theories in general, they have a bit of an interest in the human psyche, just because they're things that may be true and they're plausible enough to be true.
Yeah.
And therefore, people are quite interested in them because there's a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of facts being hidden by the government, supposedly. So today, what are we going to talk about today?
Well, today I think we're going to try and touch on Area 51 and Roswell and aliens in general. We may then flutter over towards the New World Order and the Illuminati. Maybe have a little look at the Phoenix Lights, and maybe one or two things after that. See how we're feeling, see how our voices are doing.
Exactly, and also talk about generally about what's going on in the world of conspiracy theories. There's been some big news for all those of you who know or have heard of Alex Jones. He's been banned across YouTube. Basically, Google and Apple have banned him. Facebook have banned him. And it gives us an interesting insight because a lot of people are saying that this is suppression of freedom of speech.
Mm-hmm.
I tend to differ in opinion with that. I think, well, we'll discuss it. We'll discuss it. But anyway, do you want to kick us off about aliens? What are aliens? What is their genetic composition, biological composition?
Who knows? Who knows? Maybe people in Area 51 do. So I'll tell you what. Why don't you kick us off? Because you are viewed by many as the host, and I am just the sidekick.
By the way, this is something that's developed naturally. I haven't.
Because you love
we
the
haven't
sound
discussed
of your
it.
voice. So
Well,
it's your narcissism just shining through.
Let's not.
But no, go on. Tell us what you know about Area 51. Go.
Okay, so this it starts off from Roswell, New Mexico, right? Half a century of conspiracy theories surrounding these unidentified flying objects. So the facts are these: something crashed in Roswell, New Mexico on July the 7th, 1947. And people the unofficial story is that it was an alien ship, a flying saucer. However, the government's official story is that it was a weather balloon.
Right.
There were a few witnesses that saw metallic debris scattered across a wide area. Bearing in mind that the balloon that they show, or that they supposedly have claimed was the reason for the crash, wasn't that big.
Right.
So again, already there's a bit of a conflict there of facts, because some people are saying there was loads of debris, metallic debris across a large area. The weather balloon wasn't that big. There's been some new details coming to light in recent years, that it was a large military operation that was set off to recover the craft, the alien craft apparently, and the aliens themselves. Don't know if you saw, there was that there was that famous video of an alien on a metal gurney, but I think that was basically debunked as a fake, as a rubber fake.
I mean, there's a lot of fake videos out there. There's a lot of people are making videos up and posting them as legit. And I think if ever there was any validity to Area 51 or extraterrestrials visiting us, I think these fake videos, they really draw away from any possible validity. Do you know what I mean? Because they just get a reputation then as fakers and wannabes and just trying to grab a bit of attention,
Yeah, I mean, so the Air Force, the U.S. Air Force, has released a number of conflicting stories. So at first there was at first they said it was a crash saucer. So that's Army reports telling reporters that it was a crash saucer. So Army was telling the reporters themselves that it was an alien craft.
Sure.
Then senior officers have insisted that it was only a weather balloon. Then the Office of the Secretary of the Air Force in 1995, so 23 years ago, 23 years, yeah, concluded that the recovered material was debris from a secret government program called Project Mogul, which involves high-altitude balloons meant to detect sound waves generated by Soviet atom bomb tests. Then a second report was released in 1997, not 1897. That concluded that the alien bodies that were thought to have been recovered, and that's in air bunnies, as they call them, were likely to a combination of innocently transformed memories of military accidents involving injured or killed personnel. and the recovery of anthropomorphic dummies in military programs like Project High Drive conducted in the 1950s. So,
I mean, what do you conclude from that?
I mean, this is an interesting one, right? You've got a lot of conflicting stories from the military themselves, and obviously they have an agenda to make sure that if there was a craft, that it wasn't ever recovered, or that story was never recovered, because I suppose there's a bit of a fear element here, that you don't want to think that we've been invaded by anyone. You don't want to think that there's someone else on Earth.
Yeah.
I think partly maybe I think there might be a slight religious agenda there, because we're supposed to be the only human beings that were made by God.
Yeah.
So that will immediately dispel any religion. Well, it will render it useless, essentially.
Yes.
I think there's if there was anything that was recovered that was of an alien origin, I think it might actually be, how should I call it? If it's silly to think, okay, let me go back. It's silly to think that we're the only that we're the only living organisms in the universe. Bearing in mind, how many planets are there, Tom? You're a supposed scientist. Oh, is that an official figure? Is it?
That's not an official figure, but
a lot.
You know, I'm not I'm not an astrophysicist.
So, I mean, you've got to think that there's, given the astronomical probabilities that we exist, that there might be someone else involved.
Yeah.
I think it's true. Personally, I think there might be, no matter how advanced. Now that's a different question. How advanced these creatures are is completely different. But you know, I think there might be something else living, as simple as a single cell organism, or as complex as a human being.
They've sent up, over to Saturn's moon, Europa, and they're checking out the water vapors, and they're saying that there's liquid water there, great big oceans, and they're sort of bumping it up as the main place that extraterrestrial life could live. Maybe not as people would expect, walking around or swimming or whatever, but possibly multicellular, but not very big. But there is it the Fermi equation that figures out the probability of extraterrestrial life?
Don't think so.
Or is it? I think it's the Fermi paradox. Yeah. So the Fermi paradox is the apparent contradiction between the lack of evidence and high probability estimates for the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations.
Yeah, I mean, look, Area 51 and the crash at Roswell are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
Area 51 is in Nevada. Roswell is in New Mexico, so those are two different states. But they're sort of lumped into one, because one is a secret military area where no one can go to, and no one knows what goes on there. And the other one is a famous crash site that supposedly harbored aliens.
Mm-hmm.
So Area 51 obviously does exist. It is officially and unofficially a military test zone for advanced technologies.
Yeah.
But, and here is my question, I suppose, is it easier for the government to let people concern themselves with different theories about aliens than actually reveal that Area 51 has this type of... Because obviously you don't want to tell the world that we're carrying out tests on these advanced technologies, and that's what we have. So I think, in a way, do I think that we have alien technology? Uh, Probably not.
I mean, there was the whole, I think part of the theory is, soon after the Roswell incident, look how quickly we developed jet engines and stuff like that, and saying that things were reverse engineered so we could
Yeah,
develop newer technologies. I mean, I don't know. I,
I
I
mean,
don't I don't see it as terribly feasible. If something comes crashing down through the atmosphere and breaks up, do you know what I mean, into the desert, there's not going to be masses there to reverse engineer, is there?
well, I can actually tell you how America got so advanced in the
Wasn't
development
it?
of jet
Wasn't it because of
engines.
Germany?
Yeah, so Operation Paperclip.
Yeah, because Germany developed the V2.
Well, they developed a rocket,
Yeah.
and they were rumored to have been working on flying saucers. Now, whether that's because, yeah, the V2 rocket, you're right. Whether that was, anything to do with aliens or not, I
Hmm.
don't know. But what Operation Paperclip is that after the end of the World War II, the US and the UK, basically the Allied forces, gave a lot of the scientists behind the German rocket systems, um, that they gave them a safe haven in their respective countries as long as they shared the secrets of their projects.
Right.
So, um, what you have is, and this is where it's absolutely fucked up, is you have people that sometimes helped in killing of innocent people, um, in the in creating those rockets,
Hmm.
being given safe haven and safety in countries like the UK, the US, and Russia,
Yeah.
or Soviet Union at that time, in order to develop rockets. Now, this is what started. Well, this is the rumored start of the Cold War, and this is what kicked off NASA for the US.
Yeah.
So, I mean, first of all, yes, okay, you don't want anyone, because people were worried. Even the Allied forces didn't trust each other. They they stole, or they bribed a lot of these scientists to come over to their side, to their respective sides. Nazi Germany developed a lot of technological advances, and people wanted their secrets. So they, I find it a bit. This wasn't known for a long while.
Right.
For a long, long while, people didn't know that people like Arthur Rudolph, um, and Kurt Debus and Hubertus Struckhold were taken in by the Allied forces to help them develop future war machines. Things like people like Arthur Rudolph, he in his factory, or in his development facility, 20,000 slave laborers died producing the V2 missile.
Wow.
He was 100% Nazi. He believed in it. He lived it. Um, Kurt Debus was a rocket launch specialist. He was an SS officer. He was described by the Allied forces as a menace to the security of the Allied forces. Hubertus Struckhold, the father of space medicine, designed NASA's onboard life support systems. And some of his subordinates conducted human experiments in Auschwitz and other camps where inmates were frozen and put into low pressure chambers, often dying in the process. So, I mean, okay. And this is where the question is, do you sacrifice moral high ground for technological advances? And let's face it, we use a lot of stuff that they have invented, and we rely on a lot of stuff like jet planes and jet engines, etc., in our travel, everyday travel now.
Yep.
It's quite a big dilemma whether it was the morally right thing to do, given that they've basically had this. I mean, the whole reason why you have these scrambles for these technologies was because this weird thing of conquering the world, and people were worried that the US was going to conquer the world in the Soviet Union. Soviet Union was worried that the US was worried that the Soviet Union wanted to conquer the world.
Yeah.
It just seems like such a stupid reason to adopt these people and give them safety, and when they killed so many people. So it's an interesting dilemma. What would you have done?
I mean, I don't think. I don't know. To be honest, I mean, it's like you said. It is an interesting dilemma, but when you're working with minds like that, I mean, what choice do you have? I guess. I mean, people worked on physicists worked on the nuclear bomb and stuff like that. Like Oppenheimer and people like that, and that caused death and destruction. So I don't know. Science is science at the end of the day. Can you bring in someone's correct or incorrect philosophical beliefs and social stances in to if they've got a good mind, then use it.
Yeah, I mean, Oppenheimer famously regretted designing and helping the design of the atom bomb when he saw the effects of it.
He did, yeah.
I think his famous quote is something like, "I am the bringer of death," which is quite a scary thing to see, I suppose, when you thought you developed a weapon to end all weapons, and then you see the destruction that it causes, and can't think that he was very happy when they dropped it on Hiroshima. And
Well, I think the same was true of the pilots, wasn't it? I think they once they dropped it and they turned immediately and they saw the aftermath. I think didn't a couple of them like commit suicide and
yeah, and I suppose that's partly why they now use drones with a teenager in Virginia somewhere with an Xbox controller.
yeah.
You're so separated from it that you don't actually,
Yeah.
to you it seems not real.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Well, it's no different to playing Call of Duty or something, is it really?
well, exactly. Warfare has changed so much now into this faceless, bodiless, because you obviously want to minimize your own casualties. But the issue is, for me, and we're straying from this topic slightly, but we're going to get back to it. But the issue with drone warfare for me, from the American side, the way that they do it, is they use metadata from the mobile phones
Yeah.
to track terrorists. So they go into they track an IS general,
Mm-hmm.
and they track him in a town hall of some sorts or a village, and they go and bomb that village. Now, what they don't do is they don't check for how many casualties that will cause.
Yeah.
They don't check for who else is in there. It might be children and women.
Yeah.
And it dehumanizes warfare to a point that it becomes natural. It becomes non-problematic to bomb 20,000 people, 500 people, 10 people just to get one target.
Yeah.
And they justify it as, well, that's casualties of war, that's just collateral damage, but we rid the world of this absolute monster.
Well, to use the quote, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. That's their get out clause, I think, isn't it? That's what they say.
Yeah, it is, but say
I'm
the
not saying
tables
it's
were
valid.
turned.
I'm not saying it's
No,
valid.
no, 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 no. I'm not saying you're defending them, but if the tables were turned and someone, say they policed America in that way,
Yeah,
and they were looking for a dangerous criminal, they found his phone, they tapped it, they found that he was in a church,
yeah, and then they drop a bomb on the church.
and then they drop a bomb on it, and then they say, but we got rid of a serial killer, so
Yeah, so you're
I'm
welcome.
pretty sure people will be up in arms because of that. But because they're not involved in it directly,
Yeah,
they don't really care.
it's not on their it's not on their doorstep, is it?
Obama, who was given a Nobel Peace Prize before he even did anything. Don't know if you remember this famous fact.
Yeah.
He got awarded a Peace Prize before he did anything, and he dropped the most bombs onto the Middle East
I mean,
through drones.
does
That's
that?
mental.
So does he? This might sound like an ignorant question, but does he authorize every single bomb that gets dropped?
Um, I don't know actually. I don't know if he authorizes each bomb, but I'm sure he's aware of what they can do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go back, and we've mentioned this in the previous podcast, that when there was Operation Northwoods, um, the then President John F. Kennedy stopped the military from conducting a false flag operation
Yeah.
on U.S. soil. So there must be some sort of power that they have, executive power that they have to stop or control these things. Surely, as your president, it's your fucking job to make sure that you know what's being bombed, considering innocent people are dying. Don't know. It's interesting. Is vaping annoying you?
Yes. Because I can hear every single thing that you're doing, as I'm sure our listeners can.
Okay, fair enough. So yeah, okay, but back to aliens and whatnot.
Yeah.
Do you believe they're real? Are you a fan?
Do I believe that aliens are real? I mean, I think uh, possibly, but what are the chances of them being alive and more or equal to our technological advancements at this stage in time? I mean, the the possibilities, the chances are so slim. It's unbelievable. I think there's I think there's a theory, isn't there? There's like three different outcomes of a super advanced civilization, and it's like one of them. All they just bomb themselves back to the Stone Age. Another one is that they make themselves go extinct, and the other one is that if there was a super race out there, super civilization, that they're predators, and they look for other civilizations, steal their technology, and kill them. So
A bit like Thanos in.
a bit like that. I haven't watched it yet, so don't ruin it. But I mean, it's difficult to say. I mean, not that I'm not. My opinion isn't going to matter one way or the other, really. If there are aliens, there are some, and if there's not, there's not. We may find out, or we may not. I mean, it's conjecture to me. It'd be interesting to find. I would find it interesting from a religious standpoint, because obviously I'm not terribly religious, and I
Are
think
you
that,
agnostic or are you atheist
well,
or?
let's get onto that in a second, shall we? Because I
All
think,
right.
well, no, just it would be interesting to see. Like I said, from the otherwise I'll lose my track and then I'll get
Sure,
sidetracked.
sure, 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 sure.
But I think, do you know, if they found even a microbe, a little bit of microbial life in on Europa, I would just sort of waltz up to a church and say, "Oh, um, life on another planet." So, what does God say about that?
I think there's a case to say that God invented everything, therefore He invented the aliens as well.
But why isn't
Don't
that
you?
in the Bible then?
Well, He invented all living beings.
Right.
That's in the Bible.
Okay. leaves it open for interpretation, then, doesn't it? Oh, I don't know. Maybe the scholars a few thousand years ago thought, "Oh, just in case someone looks up in the sky and finds microbial life on Europa, let's just pop this ambiguous little phrase in there, and then that covers us." Agreed? Yeah.
Well, if you believe in Scientology,
I don't.
we are aliens.
Well, if aliens exist, then we are aliens anyway, Scientology or no Scientology.
Well, there's a theory that the way that life started on Earth was through a meteorite that
Yes.
crash landed into the Earth's
Yes.
into the Earth, and therefore spread some
Well, they said
bacteria.
they said no, not back. They said it had mitochondrial life on it.
So bacteria, fine.
Well, mitochondria is a cell that is responsible for your energy transference. So,
And bacteria are made of cells, so
not bacteria though, just mitochondria.
yeah. I mean, it's interesting because there are many depictions of in Asian civilization carvings, and
Yeah.
there's a famous one, I think in Mexico, where it shows what looks like a man in a spacesuit
Right.
or a saucer with a light beam coming out of it. Now, obviously, that could be interpreted into many things, but
Uh-huh.
there's I forgot this effect. There's a famous effect which means people see things that they want to see,
Okay.
or people recognize shapes that they consider. I'm just typing to pattern recognition. Is it called?
I think I know what you mean. So they see faces and familiar objects in abstract forms.
Yeah, yeah. So like a famous example of that is seeing Jesus on a toast.
Yeah.
Not a bread toast, not a speech.
No, no.
Just clearing it up, mate. Just clearing it up. No alternative facts here. Yeah. No fake news. So I think it might be a bit of that. It might be actually that something's happened. I mean, we don't know. It's a bit of a Schrodinger's effect, isn't it? It exists and doesn't exist until there's such time that we actually see it and discover it.
Schrodinger's cat. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it's not a cat. It's a Schrodinger's alien. Yeah.
Well, sure.
But
Do
interestingly,
you want to explain the Schrodinger's cat to the people, just in case they don't know who Schrodinger is or why he's got a cat?
well, from what I know, he was a scientist, and
Physicist.
well,
Just
so
say
this is a scientist. So,
you say it, and I'll rough up.
and
I'll clear
was
up
he
the edges.
German? Was he German or was he?
I think he was German. Yeah.
Okay, so his hypothesis was so he put a cat in a windowless box and put some poison in it, and he dropped the poison, or something happened with the poison. The poison was released in a way.
He was Austrian.
He was Austrian. There we go. And his theory is that the cat is both alive and dead at the same time.
Yeah.
Until such time that you open the box and see if the cat is alive or dead.
Yes.
So
it's a paradox. Yeah.
yeah, it's you don't know that something is one way or the other
Until you
look.
Yeah.
So things like they believe that atoms behave in a certain way because we observe them to behave in a certain way rather than they actually do.
So I think they act as both a particle and a wave until they're observed, and then they act as one or the other, don't they?
Exactly. So, oh man, we are killing it on the science front. Anyway, Phoenix Lights.
Yep.
What was that?
From my very sparse research onto this, I think it was 1997 over Phoenix, Arizona, and some very distinct shapes and light formations were spotted over the city, and I think it was the most observed, quote unquote, extraterrestrial event ever. So wasn't it something? There's over 1,000 people who observed it. I think that's just the top of my head. Is that right?
Yes, I think so. Basically, it's probably the most widely recorded
Yeah, because lots of
event.
different people, all at the same time, all across the city, recorded it and phoned it in and witnessed it, etc., etc.
Yeah, because let's remember, 1997, people had cameras, so there's
Yeah,
a lot of camera footage of these lights,
yeah,
um, and they have supposedly returned in 2007, 2008,
yeah.
over the same city. Um, what are your thoughts on that? Because the official explanation is that they are military craft testing.
Right. Um, my thoughts are again. I mean, it's a good time to test it, isn't it? It's a good time to test your flying machines and their effect on people at night because they can't physically
Make
see
out.
it;
Yeah.
they're just seeing lights. Yeah, but at the same time, if it was me, I don't know what the agenda was for the whoever the chief was, in charge of these operations. But if it was me and someone said, "Should we test these vehicles?" and I say, "Yeah." Have you got anywhere in mind? Yeah, over a city. I would say, well, there's lots of just empty, arid desert where there's no one. Why don't you test it a bit more freely there, rather than this whole hoo ha of creating, you know, potential leaks? I mean, people citing it. I mean, what if you crash and then you're in a city and then it's easy for your technology to then get stolen? I don't know. I don't think it makes sense from that sort of point of view. Yourself?
So you think it's alien?
Well, I mean, not necessarily. It could just be a weather balloon.
Yeah, I mean, people have very conflicting stories about it. So some say that they've seen triangular lights, triangular spacecraft with lights. Some people say that they've seen sort of um, an angular shaped aircraft with five lights. Sorry, it's it's not known. It's not known what they actually saw because no one. It's a bit of a Schrodinger again. It is and it isn't an alien aircraft at the same time until we know the truth.
Sure. So, what would your what would your instinct be if you looked up, if you were, a resident? I mean, this is highly contentious, but if you were, a resident of Phoenix and you saw these lights, would you automatically assume alien?
I would, well, first of all, I would take out my iPhone and record it,
Sure.
obviously. Thankfully, the iPhone has swipe to the left and you can get your camera out, so it's quick. Yeah. Um, it's interesting, right? So, my dad said that when he was in the army in Kazakhstan, he saw, he was with his squadron and a large, what looks like an aircraft was hovering above them with loads of lights. And to this day, and I haven't heard this story until about 3 years ago, but to this day, he believes that he saw a UFO.
Wow.
Now, let's also clarify that a UFO is an unidentified flying object, so it doesn't mean
Alien.
that it's alien. It
Yeah.
just means that it's not a plane or a helicopter that people are used to seeing.
Hmm.
If you take a modern drone 30 years back, it would be considered a UFO.
Yeah.
So I would be tempted to say that it's a military aircraft. They're testing new technology. Why do they do it at night? Well, so people can't see it properly.
Why do it over a city?
Well, maybe to see how the cameras work, how accurate their cameras are,
Hmm.
whatever was mounted on the ships. Maybe it's to test people's reaction to large aircrafts above a city. Maybe there's a surveillance piece involved in it. But I think most of the time, the stealth bomber would be considered an unidentified flying object
Yeah.
when it was first developed. It's a almost flat black aircraft with stealth capabilities.
Yeah.
As in, the stealth as in it can't be detected by radar. So, it's more likely to be, Occam's razor, right? The simplest and most obvious answer must be the right one, or is often the right one. It probably is military.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, with some sound reasoning and some logic applied to it, then definitely.
So, right, we solved that one.
Done.
Right, people of Phoenix, Arizona, don't worry about it.
So, let me just ask you quickly. So, do you believe in aliens?
I believe that there's a high probability of another life form somewhere in the universe.
Alive now?
Yes.
Okay. A high probability.
Yeah, because look, if you believe in the infinite universe theory, then every outcome will have been accounted for, which also means that there would be a planet or a reality or an alternate universe where there are other other life forms.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would say that I believe in aliens. I mean, alien is when people say alien, people think, oh, little grey men with huge fingers and big heads.
Mm-hmm.
But alien just means not of your origin. Illegal aliens are not flying saucers. These are people that are not native to a country.
Right.
Mexicans are considered illegal aliens in the US.
Sure.
Right. So it's just something that is not of your origin. So I think a lot of the time it can be misconstrued as something more mysterious than it actually is. A single cell organism can be considered an alien organism because it's just not from Earth.
Yep, I agree. I agree.
So yeah, but this kind of all these conspiracy theory brings us closer to the New World Order.
Yes.
Tell us about the New World Order, Tom. Kick us off.
So, New World Order theory that there's some sort of grand overseeing society of the super wealthy and the super intelligent that are governing our society and omitting any sort of free will from us, controlling who's the president, etc., etc.
Yeah. So the way that I see it, and bearing in mind my stuff is from Wikipedia, but they describe it as a secretive power elite with a globalist agenda. And their agenda is to rule the world through an authoritarian world government which will replace sovereign nation states.
Sure.
Yeah. I think it was all kicked off by, was it Reagan kicked it off?
Not sure. The Illuminati or the New World Order?
No, as in there was an American president who gave a speech, and in the speech he said, "It's time for a new world order." And there are many translations of that, but I think what he meant, or what is highly translated by him, I think it was Reagan, is that it's time for a new world politics. In
George Bush Senior, I think.
Was it? Okay.
I think so.
But either way, I mean, that new world order is not obviously of the 80s time, which is I think when George Bush Senior was the president. It comes from Freemasonry, which is hundreds of years old,
Hmm.
which then went into Illuminati, which is also hundreds of years old. 19th century we're talking about.
Oh yeah,
Freemasonry was 16th and 17th century in Britain.
I think Isaac Newton was in the Illuminati allegedly, and George Washington.
Well, it was more that, yeah. I mean, look, you can really say that a government is a new world order because, or a secret society, because it talks behind closed doors. It consists of elites, blah blah blah.
Hmm.
Do I think that there's a cross-country pact to rule the world? No, because people are innately selfish.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I just, there are so many people, so many governments with differing agendas. If you look at Russia and US, if you look at China and US and Russia, if you look at India, all these big superpowers have something that they want for themselves and to promote their own
Agenda.
agenda.
Yeah.
Um, Now, whether that's completely staged to make people believe that, um, I don't know. Could be, but I think it's highly unlikely that there's a huge conspiracy to control people. They already control us,
Yeah.
right? I mean, obviously, some people may say that they've already succeeded, but they've always controlled us. Kings controlled us. Before that, chiefs controlled people. Um, have you seen a a documentary called Hypernormalization?
No.
It's Adam Curtis is the
Director.
person behind this director behind this documentary.
Right.
It's incredible. I recommend anyone, and you can get it on YouTube.
Hmm.
It's I gotta warn you, it's nearly 3 hours long,
Sure.
but it is absolutely incredible. And basically, what the film talks about is that it kicks off that we live in a time of huge uncertainty and confusion. Events seem inexplicable, right, and out of control. So everyone thought that Hillary would win, and then Trump won.
Hmm.
Brexit happened. Everyone didn't believe that Brexit would ever happen. The war in Syria just seems to be mindless. Endless migrant crisis, random bomb attacks, terrorism, all that kind of stuff. Um, and it seems that everyone who's in power doesn't know what to do with all these issues. But the film sort of goes back to how we got to this situation, and it sort of shines a light on why these things are happening, but also why we can't understand them. And within the film itself, the reason why I'm talking about this is that within the documentary itself, he talks about there's or was at least, a Russian government official called Surkov,
Right.
whose whole existence was to misdirect people to believing that Russia and the Russian government has opposition. And what he would do is he would, with the help of the Russian government, allegedly, help and fund the far right movement,
Right.
the communist movement, the feminist movement, the anti-feminist movement. So they would create this chaos which they organize,
Hmm.
and everything. So the whole point of it is not everything is as it seems, and that's where I suppose that's what the New World Order could be. It could be that my thinking that actually people have different agendas, might be the way that they want you, what they want you to believe in order to control you.
Right.
But then, you end up being running around in circles if you think like that, that everything is supposedly staged.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, the thing with this conspiracy theory, to me, is if there is a super government somewhere run by all of these elites, and they're creating all of these situations for us to believe that there either is or isn't any sort of higher power to distract us from it. I mean, they're pretty good at it, and you're probably never going to find out. So what's the difference?
Yeah, I think worrying about it is akin to passing a test and then asking everyone what they got. You can't change anything. You just feel shit.
Yeah.
I think people like, places like the Bilderberg Group who meet in Bilderberg, and these are the CEOs of banks and major corporations, politicians and kings and princes, etc., etc.
What's the other family? Is it the Rothbergs?
The Rothschild.
Rothschild, that's it, yeah.
I mean, they are, or at least the rumor, I'm not sure this is a true story, but listen to this, right? So the Rothschild family, or one of the Rothschild bankers, he instigated war between England and Napoleon.
Right.
So Wellington and Napoleon, and he financed both sides. And what the supposed rumor is that he said, I will give you money to finance your war if you surrender the control of the national bank to me. So that's the conspiracy.
Okay.
Obviously, very clever move, because whoever wins, he still wins.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't lose. And it's seen by many that money controls and starts and ends wars. And you can see that with Iraq War, classic move to misdirect people to believe that they need to go there. When when more than half of the attackers are Saudi, why would you not attack Saudi Arabia? Oh, wait, because you have huge commercial interests in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah.
Check it out, guys. I mean, it's scandalous how they got to attack Afghanistan and then wage a war on Iraq. It's absolutely ridiculous. And bearing in mind, there was no referendum on this. Obviously, after 9/11, they got the government, whether deliberately or accidentally, got exactly what they wanted, which is a huge consensus to go to war. And then even when they claimed that there were weapons of mass destruction, and then find out that there weren't any, they still proceeded with it. In fact, Mueller, I think it's Mueller, the guy that's investigating Trump, was the guy that went to the Senate and presented the findings that there were weapons of mass destruction.
Genius.
In Iraq.
He still got his job.
Well, of course, he's doing well.
Well, he'll probably get sacked, and then he'll say he wasn't, and then investigate his own sacking just to find he wasn't sacked.
Exactly. Mate, I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. But this new world order, yeah, it might be true. I think the people that make the major decisions in the world in terms of movement of markets, of products, of supplies, and of trends, they definitely meet and they discuss what they should do. Because, look, the Earth is small, relatively.
And round.
Right? We are... yes. We're running out of things to exploit. We've mined all the diamonds, or pretty much all of them.
Yeah.
We're getting to a point where we're finishing extraction of oil
and gold.
So they have to, all these things are man-made. The economics is man-made. There is no such thing as a natural free market. There just isn't. So because these things are man-made, they have to be controlled by men and women, by people, I mean. people and people that don't identify as people, or identify themselves as something else. Don't get me started on that one, because anyway. So of course they have to control trends. Of course they have to meet up and discuss how they're going to, the whole thing of, we'll put it this way, right? Someone must have benefited from giving Iran, lifting sanctions off Iran, and potentially exposing the world to hundreds of millions of barrels of oil.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a load of supply of anything, the price goes down. And obviously, the OPEC, which is the Middle Eastern cartel for oil producers, they have refused to curtail their production of oil. America keeps building up their storage of oil as well, their oil capacity. So, of course, the price is going to drop. And who loses out the most? Russia.
Yep.
Russia lost hundreds of billions of potential income. So to say that things are not done deliberately is obviously untrue. I believe that they are. To say that there's a few elite that control it shows you that it can't be true, because China loses sometimes Russia loses, sometimes USA loses. People are dying, and people, it's not, there's revolutions that happen. It might be staged. If it is staged, it is, hats off to them, because that is, what? You're controlling the world and everyone believes or doesn't believe it.
Yeah.
It's amazing. What they're doing is amazing.
And consistent.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, how many wars do we have to fight before we think, you know what, guys? Should we just stop killing each other?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's things like, I'll ask my friend to come on to our podcast. He's Syrian. He was born in Syria. He's a Syrian Arab. Because they're also, he's an Arab who's from Syria rather than, there are other nationalities and races who are from Syria. But he's Arab, and he's, I asked him once what he thought was better, living under Assad and knowing that you're going to be prosecuted if you spoke against the government, or what they currently have, which is American democracy, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what he said, unsurprisingly? I'd rather live with Assad.
Fair enough.
I have another, an acquaintance of mine who is half Iraqi, half Irish, and he said exactly the same thing. I would rather live under Saddam than live how Iraq is now.
Yeah.
Because at least there was a bit of order. What people don't, what they do realize maybe, but what the average person doesn't realize is there are so many Islamic factions who believe in different prophets,
Islam,
that not necessarily prophets, because the prophet is Muhammad, but they believe in different aspects of Islam that they're willing to kill each other for it.
Yeah.
And you can't control, because the Brits and the French struck a deal that they'll take, the Brits will take the south, I believe, and the French will take the north of Middle East, which is why a lot of, like, Lebanon speaks French, Egypt speaks French. There's a lot of French-speaking countries, or not Egypt necessarily, but Tunisia.
Mm-hmm.
Tunisia is in Africa. I get it, but they arbitrarily drew lines. They drew boundaries on these countries where people weren't used to countries. People weren't used to territories. They were nomads. They would go from one place to another, and they would, they didn't have this thing of passports and papers, and you can't go here, you can't go there. So to come in and arbitrarily draw some lines and then say, right, you two different, you two believe in two different things, but you will live together. It's crazy to think that will ever work, because this is not just, these people are willing to die for their beliefs.
Yeah.
This isn't like Catholics living next to Protestants.
No.
Although that didn't work out well in Ireland, but
Well.
But this isn't that kind of situation where people can just ignore it. They believe in it wholeheartedly, and they will kill each other for it.
Yeah. Let me ask you, because you're not a terribly religious person, are you?
I believe that there's a higher power.
Do you?
Yeah, potentially.
Okay. So you're agnostic.
Yeah.
Similar to myself. Do you think, from an atheist point of view, because we're talking about conspiracy theories, if you were an atheist, would you label religion as a conspiracy theory, as like a controlling conspiracy theory, because it gives someone power, the Pope?
I think I've always thought that organized religion is definitely a way to control people. It's a government. It's an early government. It's a way to instill fear into people, to believe that something is done for a reason, and if you do that, then you'll get punished, and therefore you shouldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm against most organized religions, because look at Catholicism as an example. If you go to Vatican City, it's covered in gold.
Yeah.
Paintings that are worth hundreds of millions, statues, and the Sistine Chapel alone.
Let alone what's in the vaults.
Yeah, exactly. All the gold and the jewels and whatever.
They even have their own bank.
And yet people are starving in the world that believe in these people.
People are destitute, and yet they prostrate themselves on the floor in the name of the church.
And they're willing to kill in the name of the church. I mean, in the name of Christianity, the Crusaders marched to the Middle East.
Yeah. I mean, to me, I don't know. This could be a bit loaded, I guess, but whenever a new pope is elected, I think there was one recently. I can't remember who it was, but they shun.
Oh, you've gone. Anyway, I think that a lot of the time, the issue with religion is that there is a huge issue with trying to control people through beliefs and
Luxury.
Hello, you've gone for a second there. I was just talking. You were gone for about 10 seconds. Anyway, I was saying that there's a huge issue with trying to control people through their beliefs,
right,
through their innermost beliefs. And what they do is they give people hope in the name of God.
Yeah.
And then they control them through saying, yes, but if you do this, you're wrong. I'm pretty sure that God does not care whether you eat pork or not.
Yeah, or if you have fish.
Or if you have fish, or if you're fucking a guy, or if you're a girl fucking a girl. Yeah. I'm pretty sure God does not care about this because...
Well, I mean, we're made in his image, so surely he must be a bit bi.
But the issue is that, for me, is when you have... When people say, homosexuality is wrong, it's like, okay, fine. But then if a guy commits massacres and then finds God, he can go to heaven.
Yeah. Yeah, if he's read his last rites, yeah, and he confesses and all of his sins on the deathbed, then yeah, he goes to heaven.
And that for me is,
sends out all the wrong messages.
Well, you saw a lot of, you saw in the 90s and even now, you saw a lot of Russian gangsters wear crosses.
Yeah.
And they'd go to church but then they'd leave the church and go and shoot someone or take someone's business away.
Yeah.
Now, how can you possibly, as a religion, say that you're forgiven, given that you continually do these things?
Yeah. As long as you confess.
I think it's a great thing to teach people a moral compass,
Yeah.
to tell people not to steal. That's a moral compass, I suppose. But it's a great way to introduce people into a moral line. But then people exploit it. You see people, these extremist cleric, yeah,
Yeah.
um, on any religious side. There are huge extremists in Christian communities, Islamic communities, in Judaic community, Jewish communities. These people are calling for people to be massacred, and they're saying that is in the name of God. I don't know if you saw. There's a famous Family Guy sketch where George W. Bush is saying, "God has spoken to me, and he told me to go to war," and then God appears and kicks him in the nuts.
Yeah.
Um, it's kind of like that. I think if God came down or up or across wherever,
Yeah.
and he heard what these people were saying in his name, like, put it this way: if my son or my daughter goes and shoots up a bank and says, "I do it in my father's honor,"
Yeah. In the name of my father. He told me to.
I would take them to the prison myself,
Oh, yeah.
because that is not speaking for me at
No.
all. And all these people who pretend to be um, messengers of God's end up being absolute fakes. I mean, look at Mormonism. The guy who founded Mormonism was a 14-year-old. I think 14. No, he wasn't a 14. He started. He was a con artist from the ages of 14.
Yeah.
But he started off this religion saying that there are seer stones, that he can read the tablets which were lost, and
And the plates
Jesus,
and whatnot.
Jesus walked in America and he'll come back to America. It's like, dude, what are you on about? But then I don't blame him because he's a chancer.
Yeah.
I blame the people that believe him
Oh, absolutely.
and think that it's normal. I don't blame the extremist clerics saying we should kill Christians or Muslims or non-believers or whatever. I blame the people that actually do it.
I blame them both. I think they're both equal in blame there.
Well, no, but if someone says to me, "You're living a sin, and to repent yourself, you need to go and kill this person of this belief," I would tell him, "You fucking what, mate?"
Well, but you're a rational, intelligent person who's not impressionable.
Well, it has to do with being impressionable. I'm sure. I think a lot of people seek support and they seek someone that they can rely on, and this God being that is being drawn in religion is someone that they can. Well, okay, put it this way: He always forgives them. He always hears their prayers. He promises them everlasting life and bliss
Hmm.
when they die. Of course, you want to believe in something like this. Of course, you do.
Yeah.
The issue is, I can never believe that such a benevolent person would want me to kill someone just because of their beliefs
Yeah.
or their race or sexual orientation, or if they eat pork or not, or if there's or not, or what their sex is or gender, whatever people use these days. Um, I just don't believe that. If the kindest and most benevolent person tells you to kill someone, that surely that's a um, an oxymoron.
Yeah.
You can't be a benevolent killer.
No. I mean, what's the Bible story where someone is being tested by God, and so to prove his love to God, God keeps taking things away from him. Um, he took away his family, and the guy got down on his knees and you know said he was thankful to God. Then he took away his farm, got down on his knees and said he was thankful to God. So on and so forth. I mean, what sort of a message is that sending out to people? that's not it's not terribly logical to me personally. Yeah, I just I find it very difficult to believe, like you said, that someone of benevolence would want all these murders and blood on their hands. I mean, they're essentially saying that God is just a kid on an anthill with a magnifying glass. I think, but I mean, what can you do? I mean, the same is said for all of these gods that are in charge of all these religions. There seems to just be murder intertwined with it, like it goes hand in hand.
You know which religion I it's not really a religion, it's more of a system of beliefs that I like, is Buddhism and Rastafarianism.
Right.
Because they don't ever say that you'll be punished. I think actually Buddhists might. They have a hell of some sorts, but a lot of
Isn't it, if you're Buddhist, if you're bad, then you get reincarnated as something worse and you go down the list. Then the better you are, you go up the list.
yeah, and I kind of like that. I kind of like the fact that they're more positive than they are negative, and even the negative is positive.
Yeah.
What you do reflects on you in your next life. If you are good, karma, I think, is a Buddhist, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe a Hindu belief. Either way, if you do something good, good will always reflect on you.
Yeah.
You know,
It's a lot more transferable, isn't it?
what is karma? Karma, origins in ancient India, key concept in Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, and Sikhism, and Taoism. Yeah, so I was a quarter right.
You were in the ballpark, yeah.
Oh, sure. Ballpark. Baseball. Yes. Shout out to Kiki if she's listening for this. But it's I kind of like that. I kind of like the fact that it tells like Buddhism tells you, look, just be a good person. Love everyone, love all living creatures, don't hurt living creatures, be kind, be generous, and you will be rewarded in the next life, not through riches and doing whatever and living in a nice garden, but being reincarnated as a better being than you are now.
Yeah.
And if you don't, and if you're a dick, then you'll be a table.
So, do you think then that should this stand for people who have psychopathy or sociopathy, people who can't control themselves and want to murder because they have no conscience?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, does karma apply to people who literally can't help themselves?
Well, this is an interesting question. I mean, obviously, we talked about mental health previously, and serial killers are wired to have no sense of remorse, and they kill, and and they see it as a normal thing. Maybe if you think about karma, that means they were born because they that way because they did something bad in their previous life. So, but it kind of, I see your point. It kind of becomes a vicious circle, because if you're born a serial killer, you will then be transformed into something bad in your next life, etc., etc. I don't know. An interesting question. And if our listeners want to comment on the video, it'll be interesting to see.
How else can our listeners get in touch with us, Dimitri?
I have no idea. You are the king of our of our social media, but how can they, Tommy?
Well, I mean, they could, if they wish, they could email us. We are yarnspinnerspodcast@gmail.com, I believe. And you can hit us up on Twitter at yarnspinners1. And Facebook, follow us on Facebook. Again, just look for Yarn Spinners. Don't go to the local knitting club. Um,
Also, yeah, we want to hear people's views on the name. So obviously, spinning the yarn is something that you do when you talk to someone. But a lot of the time, when I type in yarn spinners into Google or YouTube, a lot of knitting involved. So tell us what you think. I
I
actually
mean,
quite like it.
I
I actually
reckon
quite
that
like it.
there's a granny somewhere who is looking to set up a Facebook page and thinks, "Oh, yarn spinners will be a good name," and then she sees that I've already fucking taken it, so she's livid.
She's livid. You don't care, and therefore karma. Yeah.
Karma's going to kill me, but she might have been a bitch. So just because she wants to knit now
Oh
doesn't
my
mean that she
god.
didn't think that Nazism was a good idea.
True, true. Always ends with the Nazis, doesn't it? Always ends with the Nazis. I don't. Yeah.
It's a
Interesting.
conspiracy.
It is a conspiracy, isn't it? It is a conspiracy. How do you how do you feel about ending the podcast? I think we've
I,
covered quite a bit. You know,
I
we
think, yeah,
we talked about everything.
I think we've done the job. I think, we've educated, informed, and entertained in equal measure. I think there's a lot of stuff here to digest. I think that our listeners can be content with this free entertainment that they're receiving. Free.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, look, it's. I think we've had some comments about the duration of this podcast and how maybe having it more scripted or having it cut to a shorter length is the best idea,
Or editing it.
or editing it. Personally, I think this is more of a conversational piece.
Yeah.
I think this is a discussion between two, three, four people, depending on how many guests we get at the same time. And I think the best way to do it is to actually not have it edited, because then nothing can be taken out of context.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone can listen to it. Everyone knows that there are long silences, and we're getting better at it by filling in the voids.
Yeah.
But I think it's a lot of the time you if you imagine, or if when you're in a conversation with another person, there'll be inevitable ums and ers, there'll be inevitable vaping, inevitable phone going off, inevitable silences. No, but it's kind of the way that I want to envision it is I want it to be in an age where there's a lot of miscommunication and misleading. I want
This needs to be clear.
I want to have I want to have frank conversations with people. I want to have
Yeah.
frank conversations with you and identify what you believe in, and likewise, explain what my beliefs are. They might be wrong, they might be right, but we're here to be educated at the end of the day.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of guests, so we are going to, we're trying to push this a bit further. So we want guests on almost every show if we can, and if not, then you have to tolerate us. Tolerate me and adore Dimitri and his caramel voice. Apparently,
Who said
like
that?
it.
Was it the ladies?
Well,
It was two men. It was two men.
it was me,
It was one man.
but
It was one man.
it was one lonely balding man sat in a room looking at the park, wishing that he was rich. But
You are rich.
yeah,
You've got
so
friends.
my point was, we want guests, and if you're interested, then let's talk, and we'll get you on the show, because it would be interesting. Don't just come on, waste our time, and say like, cunt, fuck, shit, fanny, and then hang up. Because
I mean,
whilst we may laugh, and may even publish it,
definitely publish it. Definitely publish it. We said we're going to publish everything.
Yeah.
No. For me, I want to hear from scientists. From what we discussed over the last 7 episodes, I want to hear from professional conspiracy theorists. I want to hear from musicians. I want to hear from everyone of all walks of life.
Yeah.
Because I find people are interesting, and everyone's got their own story to tell. No one's experience of life is identical, even twins. So, as I said, our next guest will be a good friend of mine. He's Greek, and he's going to talk to us about about the Greek crisis, economic crisis, and social and political crisis that's happening over there at the moment.
Yeah.
And then I want to invite a friend of mine that I discussed on this podcast, who is Syrian, who will give us his view on how things are progressing there and or regressing there, if how you speak. He's quite interesting. I asked him if you could rule Syria, you were the supreme leader of Syria, what would be your first law? And you know what he said?
Go on.
Well, guess. That's not interesting.
Ban burqas.
Actually, on a very similar vein, he said that he would ban religion, and he would ban criticism of beliefs from other people. So no one can say that my beliefs are better than yours, which is interesting because obviously his experience shapes his thinking and his philosophy of life.
Right.
I think that's a huge indictment to religion. Actually, I think it shows that religion is being manipulated for evil rather than for good, which is what it was supposed to do.
Yeah,
And
that'll
on
be a
that
very interesting
bombshell,
conversation. Yeah, all right, Jeremy.
yeah, he's done well. So no, thank you for the 58 listeners that have listened to us. Thank you for Chrissy, who keeps listening to us, and to
Go on,
Tom.
Chrissy.
Shout
We love
out
you.
to Tom as well, who is forced to listen to us via Chrissy.
Hope you enjoy us.
Are we still getting the Ecuador hit?
I'm not sure. That was on SoundCloud, and we've abandoned SoundCloud for a better platform. I say better. I do.
Oh, actually,
So,
this is what I was going to ask you. Sorry.
go on.
Talking of conspiracy theories, I said we would come back to this question. So Alex Jones, who's a famous conspiracy theorist, he believes that everything is a conspiracy. He famously thought that there was a school massacre in the US. Oh, God.
Columbine?
No, with little kids. Oh,
Not in Miami.
no. It was in, anyway. The name escapes me at the moment, but it's a ridiculously notorious killing spree by a guy who killed a load of children and teachers and. But anyway, Alex Jones believed that this was all staged.
Right.
And he got a lot of flack for it, obviously, because a lot of kids died.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the famously there's
Sandy Hook.
Sandy Hook. That's it. Famously, there's one guy who was a father of one of the kids who was a conspiracy theorist until his kid died in the shooting, and he sort of stopped conspiracy theorizing, and he thought that, but he got a lot of abuse from other conspiracy theorists saying that he's an actor, that he's a fake, that his kid, he never probably had kids, which is really sad to hear. But anyway, the story is that Alex Jones was banned from major platforms by Google, YouTube, Facebook, and Apple. Now, what's your thought on that? I mean, they sort of described it as hate speech. What do you think of that?
I think they're perfectly within their rights to ban. At the end of the day, he's not doing it through his own website. He's not doing it through his own channels. He's doing it through an organisation, that millions of people have access to, and they're, to be honest, we spoke about it a little bit earlier when we were discussing what we were going to talk about tonight, and it's essentially the same as, if I work for a company and then I go spouting in company clothing saying, this, that, and the other, I've got every right to be sacked because I don't represent that company's views, and the company doesn't represent my views. So I think they're perfectly entitled to cut the strings and say, nope, you can have an outlet, but it's not going to be with us.
Well, I liken it to being in a nightclub and not being allowed entry or being thrown out of a nightclub.
Yeah,
Um, Obviously,
I agree. Yeah, that's a good analogy. I agree with
it's
it.
a slightly trivial way of looking at it, but I think it's the same as a company that has its own philosophy and its own codes of conduct, and if you break that code of conduct, then you're not allowed to be part of that company. Um,
Yeah,
and I think, to be honest with you, there might be other reasons for it, but it's for, like, some people are going crazy on things like if Google cites that they ban any hate speech, people say, oh yeah, so what how far do you go from here? But, well, to be honest with you, if you don't like how Google describes or what it defines as hate speech, go to another platform.
yeah.
I think there are
I
plenty of
think Google will
platforms out
survive
there.
it. I think Google will do just fine without the people who doubt them.
Yeah, and to be honest with you, is it a suppression of freedom of speech? Well, it's not a
No.
government body; it doesn't suppress freedom of speech.
Well, they're not stopping him from speaking. He can go outside and say it.
Well, plenty of times as well. Things like men aren't allowed to wear shorts into the office. Now, some would say that is suppression of freedom of expression,
Yeah,
right? Or in the case of London, it was too hot this summer, not because of global warming or climate change. Don't worry about that.
it's not real
No,
anyway.
it's not real.
Flat
And
Earth,
and
mate.
a lot of men in protest wore skirts.
Fair enough. It's the
So
same as women being made to wear high heels and not being allowed to wear like pumps or something more comfortable to work.
it's an
It's the
image
same.
thing. It's an image thing, and it's companies' code of conduct. Now, is that bad? Yeah, objectively, it is bad.
Yeah,
But don't work for that company. Easy as that for me. Obviously, people are gonna go crazy over this, but that's my view, and that's my thing. Right?
yeah.
You do whatever the fuck you want to do. So,
That's our opinion. Boom, suck us.
anyway, guys, thank you very much for listening. Whoever's listening, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.
Peace out. Peace out.